The night my family called the police on me, I was standing in the middle of the living room I grew up in, and somehow, I was the stranger. "You need to leave," my father said, his voice cold and steady, like he had already rehearsed this moment in his head 100 times. I looked around slowly. Same walls, same furniture, same house where I had spent 18 years of my life. But none of it felt familiar anymore. "Leave," I repeated quietly. "This is my home too." My older brother Daniel laughed from the couch, shaking his head like I had just told the dumbest joke imaginable. "Not anymore," he said. "You gave that up when you decided to disappear for 5 years. Disappear. That's what they called it. Like I had just walked away for no reason. Like there wasn't a story behind it. Like there wasn't a reason I never came back." My mother crossed her arms, her expression tight with something between anger and embarrassment. "Hey, we told people you were working overseas," she said. "Do you have any idea how humiliating this is?" Humiliating? Not "where were you?" Not "are you okay?" It's just humiliation. I let out a slow breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "I didn't come back to argue," I said. "I just came to get what's mine and leave." That's when everything shifted. Daniel stood up. Fast. Too fast. "What's yours?" he snapped. "You don't have anything here?" "I left some documents," I replied, "and a few personal items." "You mean the stuff you abandoned?" he shot back. My father stepped forward slightly, placing himself between us like he was already choosing sides. "You're not taking anything," he said firmly. I stared at him, trying to understand how this conversation had escalated so quickly. "I'm not asking," I said quietly. But that was a mistake. Because the moment those words left my mouth, Daniel pulled out his phone. "You hear that?" he said loudly, already dialing. "He's threatening us now." My stomach tightened. "Daniel, don't," but it was too late. He turned slightly away, putting the call on speaker like he wanted an audience. "Yeah," he said into the phone. "We need officers here. There's a guy trespassing and making threats." Trespassing in my own house. I almost laughed. Almost my mother didn't stop him. My father didn't correct him. No one said a word. And in that silence, I understood something. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a decision. They had already chosen who I was in this story, and it wasn't family. Minutes passed. Slowly, no one spoke to me, and no one even looked at me. I stood there like a ghost in a place that used to belong to me, until finally, the sound of sirens broke the silence outside. Daniel smirked slightly. "Good," he said under his breath. "See how tough you act now." I didn't respond, because fear wasn't what I was feeling. Not anymore. Something else had taken its place. Something calm. Something controlled. Because the truth was, they thought they knew exactly who they had just called the police on. But they didn't. Not even close. And when that front door opened, everything they believed about me was about to collapse. The knock on the door wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. It carried authority, finality, the kind of sound that changes the atmosphere of a room instantly. Daniel moved first, almost eager, like a kid waiting to prove he was right. He opened the door with a confident expression, already playing the victim in his head. "Officer, thank God you're here," he said quickly. "This guy." He stopped mid-sentence. Because there wasn't just one officer standing outside. There were 3, and behind them, a 4th figure stepped forward slowly, older, calm, wearing a different badge, the sheriff. The room shifted without anyone saying a word. My father straightened slightly, his posture tightening with nervous respect. My mother's expression changed too, her earlier confidence fading into something more cautious. Daniel blinked, thrown off for just a second. But only a second. "Yes," he continued, recovering quickly. "That's him. He forced his way into our home and started making threats." One of the deputies glanced at me briefly, then back at Daniel. "Sir," he said evenly, "we'll handle it." Daniel nodded, stepping back with a satisfied look like the outcome was already decided. Like this was over. The sheriff hadn't said anything yet. He hadn't even looked at me directly. Instead, his eyes moved slowly around the room, taking everything in: the tension, the distance, the way no one stood near me. And then he turned and looked straight at me. For a moment, no one spoke. Not my family, not the deputies. Just that quiet, heavy pause where something unspoken passes between two people. Recognition, not from me. from him. I saw it instantly. A subtle shift in his expression. Not surprise. Not confusion. Recognition. And that's when Daniel made his second mistake. "So," he said loudly, gesturing toward me, "are you going to arrest him or what?" The words echoed slightly in the room, sharp, impatient, entitled. One of the deputies frowned slightly, but the sheriff didn't react the way Daniel expected. He didn't move toward me, didn't reach for cuffs, didn't even ask me a question. Instead, he took one slow step forward, then another, walking past Daniel, past my father, past everyone, till he was standing directly in front of me. The room went completely silent. My mother shifted uncomfortably. My father opened his mouth slightly, like he wanted to say something but didn't. Daniel looked confused now. "Sheriff," he said cautiously. "That's him." No response. The sheriff's eyes stayed on me, measuring, confirming. And then he did something no one in that room was prepared for. He straightened his posture, his expression sharpened, and with calm, deliberate precision. He raised his hand and saluted. Not casually, not jokingly. A real salute, sharp, respectful. Final. The air in the room snapped. My mother gasped softly. My father froze completely. And Daniel just stared, like his brain had stopped working. "Sir," the sheriff said, his voice firm and controlled. One word, but it carried weight, a kind of weight that doesn't need explanation. Because suddenly, everything had changed. The same officers who had walked in expecting a disturbance were now standing straighter, more alert, watching me differently, not like a suspect, but like someone important. Daniel let out a short, confused laugh. "Wait, what?" he said. "What is this?" No one answered him because in that moment, he had already lost control of the situation, and he didn't even realize how bad it was about to get. The silence didn't just sit in the room. It tightened, like the air itself had turned heavy, pressing down on everyone at once. No one moved, no one even breathed properly, because nothing made sense anymore. Daniel was the first to break. This is a joke, right?" he said, forcing out a laugh that sounded thinner than he intended. "You're saluting him?" The sheriff didn't even look at him. That alone was enough to make the tension worse, because it wasn't just disrespect, it was dismissal, complete and effortless. "Sir," the sheriff said again, his voice steady, "we weren't aware you were in the area." I didn't answer immediately. I just looked at him for a second, long enough for my family to feel it, that unspoken understanding between us. Then I gave a small nod. "It wasn't planned," I said calmly. That was it. No explanation, no details, but it was enough, because the sheriff nodded back instantly, like that answer alone filled in everything he needed to know. Behind him, the deputies shifted, slightly more alert now, more aware. My father finally found his voice. "What is this?" he asked, his tone caught somewhere between confusion and rising concern. "Why are you calling him sir?" No one answered him, because the answer was already standing right in front of him. Daniel stepped forward again, his frustration starting to break through the confusion. "Okay, no, hold on," he said. "I don't know what kind of game this is, but he broke into our house. Like he doesn't belong here." The word belong hung in the air. Wrong. Completely wrong. The sheriff turned his head slightly, just enough to acknowledge Daniel's existence. "Sir," he said calmly, "I'd suggest you choose your next words very carefully." Daniel blinked, thrown off again. "Excuse me?" But this time, the room wasn't on his side anymore. Not even close. My mother stepped back slightly, her eyes moving between me and the sheriff like she was trying to solve a puzzle that suddenly had too many missing pieces. My father looked at me differently now, not with anger, not with authority, with doubt. "You're going to explain what's happening," he said, but there was hesitation in his voice now. Right now. Let out a slow breath, not because I had to, but because I chose to. Then I reached into my jacket. That small movement alone caused one of the deputies to tense slightly, but the sheriff didn't react. He already knew. I pulled out a simple dark wallet, flipped it open, held it up just enough for the sheriff to see not my family, just him. His reaction was instant, subtle, but undeniable. His posture straightened even more. "Understood," he said quietly. That was it. No questions, no verification, just acceptance. And that's when my father's voice cracked slightly. What? What did you just show him? I closed the wallet calmly, slid it back into my jacket, and finally looked at them. At the people who had just called the police on me, tried to have me removed, erased. You wanted me gone? I said quietly. No one interrupted. No one dared to, so you called the police. He paused, let that settle, then added, you just didn't realize. I took a small step forward, not aggressive, not threatening, but enough to shift the balance completely. Who you were calling them on?
Yeah.
Daniel's confidence was gone now, completely gone. What does that even mean? He asked, his voice lower, uncertain. I didn't answer him, because I didn't need to. The sheriff already had. And in the next few seconds, everything was about to spiral in a direction none of them could control. The room didn't just feel tense anymore, it felt unstable. Like one more sentence would break everything completely. Daniel looked between me and the sheriff, his confidence now replaced with something raw and unfamiliar. Fear. Okay, enough, he said, trying to regain control. I don't care who you think you are. He's trespassing. Do your job. The words sounded strong, but they landed weak, because no one moved. Not the deputies, not the sheriff, no one. And that silence said more than any response ever could. The sheriff finally turned fully toward Daniel. Slowly, deliberately, sir. He said, his tone no longer neutral. You made a report claiming an active threat. Daniel swallowed. Yes, because there is one. The sheriff nodded slightly and asked, would you like to continue with that statement? Something in his voice changed the meaning of the question. It wasn't support, it was a warning. Daniel hesitated. For the first time since this started, he hesitated. He was threatening us, he said, but the certainty was gone. The sheriff stepped a little closer. Not aggressive, but controlled. Because making a false report, he continued calmly, has legal consequences. My mother gasped softly. My father stiffened. And Daniel's face lost what little color it had left. This isn't a false report, he said quickly. He shouldn't be here. The sheriff's gaze hardened slightly. He has every right to be here, he said. That sentence hit harder than anything else so far, because it didn't just defend me, it confirmed something deeper. My father shook his head slowly. No, he said. This is our house. I looked at him, calm, unshaken. Then I said the one thing I had been holding back. It was. The word echoed. Simple. Final. My mother blinked. What does that mean? I reached into my jacket again, not for the badge this time, for something else. Folded document. I handed it directly to the sheriff. He glanced at it briefly, then turned it around and handed it to my father. Sir, he said, you may want to read that. My father took it slowly, confused. His hands trembled slightly as he unfolded the paper. His eyes moved across the page once, then again, slower this time. Daniel leaned in. What is it? He asked. My father didn't answer. Because he couldn't. My mother stepped closer, reading over his shoulder, and then her hand flew to her mouth. No, she whispered. Daniel grabbed the paper, impatient, aggressive. He scanned it quickly, then froze completely. This isn't real, he said. What? But it was. Every word of it. I didn't disappear for 5 years, I said calmly. They all looked at me doubtfully, finally. I built something, I continued. And when I came back, I bought everything you thought you still owned. The silence that followed wasn't shock. It was collapse. This house, I said quietly, is under my name now. My father's voice cracked. You're lying. I shook my head slightly. No. Daniel stepped back, like the floor itself had betrayed him. Can't do that, he said. I already did. The sheriff stepped slightly to the side, not blocking me anymore, standing with me. Sir, he said respectfully, how would you like to proceed? I looked at my family, at the people who had just tried to erase me, and for a moment, I said nothing. Then ask them to leave, I said calmly. My mother broke first. Please, she whispered. We didn't know. I met her eyes, and for the first time, there was no anger left. Just distance. I know, I said, and somehow that made it worse, because they finally understood. This wasn't revenge, it was consequence. and there was nothing they could do to stop it.